Are you tired of an awful ride when you're towing trailers? Well, today we're going to go through multiple things you can do to make your tow rig ride like a dream. So a common issue I see, driving down the interstate, I'll pass a hotshot driver and you see that guy sitting there just taking a buck. And he's driving 8-10 hours a day. I've been in the same scenario. I was running an F450 with a wedge trailer. I'd hop on the highway, run to the auction, and that concrete road was so rough, I'd have to pull over to sip my coffee. Now, I've tested a lot of products over the years. I've tried all kinds of different suspension upgrades. Some of them kind of work, some of them cause some major problems, but I have found the ultimate way, whether you're on a budget or you want to spend a lot of money to get a perfect ride that'll fit all those budgets. We're gonna start the most important part, and that is the rear setup on your truck. So a couple things. Depending on how much you're loading on the truck, if you're overloading your springs, that is going to cause a poor ride. These diesel trucks have a lot of torque. If you're putting that torque to the rear axle, if you're overloaded, your springs are maxed out, you do not have room for that suspension to travel. So when you hit bumps on the highway, that rear axle is hopping, is rolling back and forth very rapidly. Just like when you're in the sand and that axle starts hopping, it's doing the same thing when it's on the highway. The simplest thing you could do, and this is the most cost effective, is add 1 or 2 leaf springs. What that'll do is stiffen the pack, it'll help prevent axle roll, it'll get some of that weight off those overloads and allow for more suspension travel. You've got to start with the base, and that's your leaf springs. If your leaf springs are way too soft or underrated, you need to beef them up. Next would be adding a set of airbags. There's a lot of times where I've towed a trailer with customers' trucks. You'll load an empty trailer, it rides great. As soon as you load that trailer, it just rides terrible. You're getting bucked. Every bump you hit, the whole truck just chatters. You can see the trailer and the truck is chattering against each other. Adding 30 or 40 pounds of air in those airbags will help with that axle wrap, take some of the weight off the overloads and stabilize the rear of that truck. Now, if you're running airbags, keep this in mind. If you're having to add over 60 pounds of air to get the back of your truck up and level, you need to adjust those leaf springs. Airbags ideally give you the most comfort when they're somewhere between the 30 and 60 pound range. Once you get over 60 pounds, those airbags are so hard, when you hit a bump, it does not allow for that suspension travel. That bracket of the airbag is taking all of the force, and those brackets are not built to accommodate that. Second is those brackets are inside of the leaf spring pack on most setups, and so you're putting a lot of weight on that axle tube housing versus the very outside close to the bearings where that weight is designed to be carried. But I have seen a lot of people add the bump stop upgrades where the bump stop essentially acts like an airbag. They're hauling 2,000 pounds of tongue weight back here on the rear of the bed. They have those bump stop extension, and what happens is that truck is sitting right down on those bump stops, and it's only allowing for about an inch of travel on that rear suspension. So when they're hitting a rear bump, the frame of the truck is taking all of that load, and what happens is you have the bed mounted, which keeps the rear of the truck stable. You have the cab mounted, which keeps the front of the truck stable. You end up with a very weak point right here between the bed and the cab. I have seen those crack, and I have also seen a lot of cracks right over the center axle. Just recently we pulled some beds off of a customer's trucks, moved them over to a new one. Every one had a small hairline crack right on the frame, and the one thing they had in common, they all had bump stop extension. They thought they were doing themselves a favor by allowing that bump stop to only go down about an inch, and then the truck would stay level no matter how much they put on there, but they lost all of their suspension travel, and I'll tell you, the ride quality was terrible. The next step you would take is looking at a shock upgrade. So the factory shocks are great at accommodating the factory weights of the unloaded truck. So you driving down the interstate and you cross a transition from asphalt to concrete, you typically have a good little bump, and you'll notice a lot of these trucks with a heavy load, you hit that bump and there's 2 or 3 recoils after. When you hit it, you really feel it. You even feel it all the way up in the front end. So a simple shock upgrade, even if you're not doing a lift on the truck, adding a reservoir shock from Fox or Carly or King, you might spend $200 to $300 per shock. You could spend a lot more, but even a simple upgrade, just going to the next level up from the factory, will make a huge difference in that way that truck rides, especially dualies. If you're hauling 30, 40,000 pound trailers, it's gonna make a huge difference. So you don't have to lift or level a truck to take shocks. I would say every truck out there, if I was buying one that was completely stock, the first thing I would do is find out how much weight I'm putting on this rear axle and adjust my spring pack and airbags to accommodate, and I would throw a set of shocks all the way around. That will improve your ride quality while towing at least 50%. You're gonna see a huge improvement. So the next thing we're gonna talk about is the trailer. So once you get your truck set up, if you're still hauling a junk trailer, you're still gonna have some issues. So a couple of things I look for when I buy trailers is I want a trailer with a really strong neck. So a lot of that jerk that you can get while driving down the road, even if your truck is stabilized, is a weak neck. So you'll notice a lot of trailers have a small neck, or the design of the neck and the way that it connects to the main frame on the trailer is just a weak point. And if you look in your rearview mirror and you look look down the body line of the truck on a rough road, you'll see that trailer rainbowing on you. You'll see it hopping up and down. But it's common to see a large piece of movement between here and the deck of the trailer. Especially on a flatbed like this, there is not a gusset going from the main gooseneck down to the frame. I do have a couple of trailers that have that, and you'll notice a huge difference in the way they ride. But this Diamond C trailer has a couple things. It has a very, very strong coupler up here in the front. So they have the new Kurt design. It has a torsion key inside of it. So there is a rubber grommet that hitch sits on. So that gives you just a little bit, maybe a ½ inch of play to take some of that bumpiness out. And it has a very tight fitting square tubing with a couple of torque bolts so you can get that tube locked really, really tight. So a common thing I see, I'll see a trailer going down the road, you can tell it's bucking, and you'll look right here at his hitch, and that hitch is loose, and the driver had no idea. You may not notice it under just a load by your hand, but once you have 20,000 pounds on a trailer, if that thing's loose and you have movement there, every time you hit a bump, that trailer is shifting forward and backwards, and that's going to give you a poor ride. So when you're looking at trailers, you know, if you're just hauling one little short hauls, it may not be as important to you, but if you're going thousands of miles down the road every day, it's worth a few extra $1,000s to get some specific options like a torque tube, which especially with the longer trailers, and if you're loaded heavy up on the front, prevents those trailers from wobbling side to side, which will definitely help improve your ride quality. If the frame is not sufficient, a lot of times they'll put bridge strap on the bottom of that frame, which looks kind of like this rub rail with little spacers, and what that does is prevent flex in that frame. It'll give you a more solid ride so your load is not bouncing up and down on that trailer. So Diamond C builds a great trailer. There's several other companies out there that are building good, strong trailers, but make sure you have the right trailer to accommodate your weight. Truck and trailer we're weighing right in at 33,000 pounds. So the truck's weighing around 11,000 pounds. This Diamond C trailer comes in just around 8,000 pounds. The JCB weighs about 14,000 pounds. Where you position the load is extremely important. You want to make sure that you're putting around 20 to 30% of that weight up there on the pin. If you're too light on the pin, you're going to end up with a jerking sensation. If you're too heavy on the pin, you're going to way overload that rear axle, and you're going to have that axle wrap scenario where every time you hit a bump, you're really forcing a lot of load on that rear suspension. One thing I do is we stop buying anything that has the 6 or 7 or 8,000 pound axles. They just weren't stout enough axles, and when you hit bumps, those things are flexing and the trailer's bouncing. I've gone to a minimum of everything we buy. We put the 10,000 pound axles on. You get a much stronger spring pack. The way they build the frame on those trailers is just far superior. Even though the weight rating may not be much higher than your 8,000 pound trailers, they just ride so much better. Having a little bit of that spread axle really helps. So when you hit bumps on the road, those axles have time to articulate and get over the bump versus bouncing the trailer up in the air. All of our trailers we hook up with a electric over hydraulic brake system. We just find those things have been a lot more reliable. We can get more miles out of the brakes. These are running a disc brake setup, so it's a lot easier to check the brakes, see how much pad is left. So on this trailer, it is built with sway control. They put a torque tube all the way down that essentially allows where the cross member comes across, it is welded solid. So that trailer has very minimal flex side to side. So if you are going over uneven terrain, it keeps that trailer nice and flat, which helps keep vibrations out of the truck.